I'm going to get started. So thank you for joining us today. This meeting is being recorded, so it will be distributed to our membership once we're done. The topic today is Breaking Barriers, the Path to True Inclusivity. We have three amazing speakers with us today. We're panelists. First, we have Ms. Zanelle Brown. She is a seasoned legal professional with a diverse background and a passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Her current role is a regional administrator at the State Court Administrative Office for Wayne County. She retired from the Third Circuit Court after 28 years of service. She is active in many bar associations, serving as the D&I co-chair for women lawyers, and she is the president of the Detroit Bar Association. Next, we have Amber Kiffmiller. She is an associate at Miller Johnson. Amber focuses her practice on a broad range of complex commercial litigation, arbitration, and appeals for clients in the insurance, manufacturing, financial, health, transportation, and construction industries. She has represented individuals, owners, transporters, manufacturers, and contractors in various breach of contract disputes, along with negligence, UCC fraud, trade secrets, and at various levels, such as the federal and state, and the agency level. Amber previously served as a judicial clerk to the Honorable Catherine Sampson, who is the Chief Judge of Bankruptcy in the Southern District of Mississippi. And last but not least, we have Ms. Carrie Almasian. She is an assistant United States attorney at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Western District of Michigan. She works in the Civil Division and defends the United States and its agencies in civil litigation, including Title VII actions, tort actions brought under the Federal Tort Claims Act, Administrative Procedures Act matters, and immigration litigation. Carrie earned a bachelor's degree from Michigan State University and a JD from Wayne State University. She is a member of the Women Lawyers Podcast Committee and our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Thank you all for being here today. I know we wanted a diverse group of women from different areas of law and different backgrounds, and I think we have the perfect panel here. So thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to pose this question to all three of you, and maybe we could go in the order that you were introduced. And that way we could keep it consistent so people don't talk over each other while we're recording. And my first question is, what does true inclusivity mean? And what does it take to create inclusion? And have you experienced it in your career? If you can't answer that question, is it something that you haven't experienced or you have experienced in your career? Zanelle, please take us off.
So let me start in reverse of your questions. Have I experienced true inclusion? I will say yes, I have. It's come at different times in the career, and it was the result of people really striving for that to happen. It's not something that just happened by osmosis or just because you showed up in the room. It was people really taking the time to say, okay, these are the people that I work with. I want to get to know them. I want to know you as an individual. I want to know, what's your background? Tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me a little bit about what you like to do. And the things that we both like to do is including each other in that aspect of our careers. What stands out for me most oftentimes are people who are like drastically different from me, male and white. And it's like, well, I really believe in court systems. I love to see court systems run. Judges who really are about, let's do justice, let's do what's right here, not necessarily looking out for one particular area or one particular demographic and thinking, oh, the other people really don't matter. How do we make sure that when people come through our door, they get the services that we need? So I felt that inclusion a lot when I was working in the court system, starting under Chief Judge Colombo, continuing under Chief Judge Kinney. And when I was friend of the court working with Virgil Smith, Chief Judge Virgil Smith, and making sure that in the services that we delivered, that inclusion was there for those who were working in the court, but also who were coming into the court. So the next question, what did that true inclusion look like? Like I said, it's recognizing that I'm not here for me as an individual, but I'm here for everyone when I'm sitting in that role, that work role, and making sure that the services I provide are available to you. And you may need some assistance getting to those services. It could possibly be you need an interpreter, you need an ADA accommodation, you may need forms that are easy for you to read and fill out. It could be because of age or something like that. You may need some type of service that we didn't think of, but did we make sure we have those resources available, or how do we get those resources available when they're not there? On the employment side, for me, it was how do you make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to get to the positions that are available? When I hired in at the front of the court in 1997, there was one African American female referee. She passed away like a year later. And there was really no pathway if you weren't a friend of the court attorney to become a friend of the court referee. So one of the barriers is like, okay, how do you take that down? And then through a lawsuit that was actually removed, and then it was like anyone can apply who has the qualifications to be a referee. So it's not a closed shop anymore. Then again, you take that official barrier down, but then are you also looking at places where you'll find diverse candidates? And then you're having diverse candidates apply. And then when that diverse candidate comes in, do you have a workplace where that person can actually bring their talents and feel like they're making a contribution and feel that it is valued? So it's a lot that goes into that. And like I said, I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've been glad to be in places where I can experience it, but I think that we need to make sure it becomes a norm and not just something that happens here and there.
Thank you, Zanelle. Amber, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I think I've pretty much got it, and I won't touch on all of those things. And I echo a lot of what Zanelle has said there. I think that keeping the conversation going is very important, and to have, fellow women who are interested in a path towards diversity, inclusivity, and making those things happen. But to Zanelle's point is we need more than just folks who look like us or maybe don't look like us in order to make that happen. So for the example of the white male, it's good to have an ally, so to say, who are, taking that charge along with you and, constantly bringing new ideas to the table. And we may get into this a little bit later, but one thing that I really appreciate about Miller Johnson, where I work now, I've been there for about a year, and we have a women's initiative network that really focuses on different career paths into the practice of law. So what does diversity look like? It can be race, religion, educational backgrounds. It's a lot. Diversity, I think, is a very broad category. And when you have more diverse folks working towards a common goal, I always think that the outcome is better. But I truly do think that that mission takes allies. It takes folks who are constantly interested in working towards a goal, whether that's through engagement surveys, a DE&I coordinator, what have you. But it takes a village, so they say. And to Zanelle's other point there, it needs to become the norm, where it's something that we're thinking about all of the time and working towards all the time, and not necessarily needing to set forth specific dates and times because it's just part of the practice, right? But I moved down to Mississippi to go to law school, and just culturally, that was very diverse for me. It was a lot different than growing up on the east side of the state in Michigan and practicing in those courts. It wasn't, it wasn't necessarily something that we had committees and initiatives for, because Mississippi is a very diverse state. So, and when you get lawyers who are interested in going to places like Mississippi from Michigan, that was a really cool experience, because everyone was like, wow, what got you down here? And it was like, well, I was born and raised in Michigan, and I wanted to come down to the South and make a difference and contribute. And the brain drain from those types of schools down there is a big thing. I think I graduated with about 150 in my class, and only about 25 of us sat for the Mississippi bar. So I for my personal mission, I always, like to bring diverse experiences to the table, as well as, cultural backgrounds, race, religion, age, creed, what have you. So yeah, that's my personal view on those questions.
Should I just go ahead? Okay. So I think when I think about this topic, to me, I sort of look back on my career where I've only had 2 jobs out of law school, was at a law firm, and then I went to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And in both of them, there were very few women when I started. And I think there was an effort maybe to hire women, but if you don't feel like you're part of the team, I think that's, lack of inclusivity. And I've was only at a law firm for about 3 years. I've now been at the U.S. Attorney's Office for almost 16 years. And where we are now, I would definitely say that it supports a more inclusive environment, because not only are there more women, but there's a lot of mentoring going on. And I've mentored some of the newer AUSAs that we've hired, and I'm hoping that they feel sort of this more inclusive environment than I felt when I first started. My first interview at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I had just seen 12 Angry Men, and I walked in and I made a joke about it because they were all men, and maybe I was, I don't know, 32 at the time, or 30. No, I was older than that, but anyway. So it was just kind of a little bit of intimidating environment, and I was joking and everyone laughed, but I wanted to say, no, really, I feel like I just walked into a room with 12 angry men. Like, you might be nice people, but this is a room full of men. There was not a single female person. And I think we'll probably get to that later, but I do think in hiring, if you don't have a panel that shows some diversity, it makes it very tough for an applicant, obviously, to feel like they would be included in your environment. So I guess when I think of inclusivity, that's sort of how I relate it to sort of where I was before and where I am now, and how I've seen, my office, for example, make more of an effort to include not only women, but people of other diverse backgrounds. And it's a little bit tougher. Grand Rapids doesn't have maybe the diversity that we used to have, or that some other areas have. And I do think it's growing, and that we're making an effort. And still think we have a little ways to go, but it's come such a long way. And I think really making people of different backgrounds, especially women and women of different backgrounds, really feel included.
Yeah. And our next question, it talks about like 3 most pressing issues that need to be addressed so inclusion can be attained by all women. Feel that you guys touched on it a little bit. If it's something that, if you think there is something that you missed when you answered the previous question, and you could just rattle off some of the issues that, what are the needs that in order for us as women to attain that inclusion that we need in your various fields, right? Zanelle's career has been vastly different, and Amber's at Miller Johnson, and Carrie's as a federal prosecutor. What does it look like in your various spheres that your spaces can do?
I think Carrie hit on something when she said, that whole piece about mentoring, that no matter where you are in your career, is there somebody you can reach back? So if you're just starting out, can you reach back to someone who's in law school? If you're in law school, can you reach back to somebody who's in high school? And if we're all reaching to pull someone forward, I think that that'll be helpful for us all. Also, the reaching back will touch this as well when you're thinking about generational, that we have to look at, how far the last generation got us, where we're standing currently and what do we need to give to that next generation so they can go in even further.
I love that. I think that's a really good way to say that, Zanelle. Something that we've recently talked about in my firm amongst the women particularly is recognizing that the pathway to quote unquote success looks different for different people. And, you know, achieving a work-life balance and recognizing that you can be a partner in a large law firm and still be a mom and still have time to dedicate your time to, you know, hobbies, or, you know, if you sit on a nonprofit, you know, or just social family and friends time. And, you know, not everybody's path to success, whatever that looks like or whatever you have in mind for that, that's not a, there's no boilerplate template for that, right? You can achieve your dreams and your goals, and that doesn't look the same for everybody, and it doesn't need to. And for me, you don't need to bill, you know, 2,400 hours at the firm in order to, you know, be successful. And I think recognize employers, hopefully, it seems to me, are doing a better job of recognizing that like burnout is a real thing and trying to give flexibility with what the parameters of the job look like. And, you know, if you're willing to work hard and you're talented and you're dedicated towards what you do towards your clients and you're a good colleague and stuff, I think it's important that employers, you know, show you that you're valued and are willing to work with you in order to make that path work for both employer and employee. And I think from when I've started, and I've only been practicing for 6 years, but I see that improving. And when I do things like this, I hear a general trend towards more flexibility and recognizing, like I've said, that success looks different for everybody. And there's many ways to achieve that, but where you're working has a lot to do with that, and them valuing that piece as well. Like, we're all humans here and we're all doing our best.
Right. And I agree with what everyone has already said. And I do think in terms of mentorships that was something, you know, again, kind of looking back at the beginning of my career, I didn't really have. I mean, I did have a mentor, and it was just a really weird, unusual, weird experience for me. Kind of, I would say, a failed mentorship. I don't think it was on my part, but that sort of helped me realize what I would need to do as a mentor. And I've tried to do that. And I think my office has really tried to do that. It was a little tricky for a while because we just didn't have enough people to mentor. We just didn't have a lot of diversity to sort of help mentor that. And so I'm hoping that at least helps some of the newer people that we have at my office. And also, we've been very fortunate that we've recently developed a really great flexible work option policy. It's a little bit harder in the government because we do have a lot, you know, restrictions that come from the Department of Justice, but we have a U.S. attorney who really values work-life balance for both men and women. I think this, you know, tends to fall more on women when you're talking about house duties and children and things like that, if that's the path you take. But so we can essentially work an 8-hour day as long as it's between like 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. as long as we get our 8 hours in. That's allowed. We used to have a little bit more of a strict schedule that you sort of have to be in by a certain time, and then they're not going to tell you can't work more than 8 hours, but we sort of had these tours, they were called, and everybody had their own, and it was during a more traditional work day. So I'm an early person. I can get up early and be done by 3:30 if my workload allows it. I can stop and run errands, or I can get my hair done. And my kids are older, but there's a lot of people with some younger kids. They can take their kids to appointments or pick them up from school, and then just maybe work a couple extra hours at night. And so I think that's going to help a lot to help women that's their needs. Some people just have to let their dogs out. So like, go home and let your dog out if you need to, and come back. And something that I just think, in my view, I remember joking with some of my colleagues, you know, okay, finally they realize we're all professional adults, and I know we're not billing hours, but we can take a 2-hour lunch because we're doing something extra, we're running an errand, and we're still going to get our work done. And so I don't think all U.S. attorneys' offices are doing that. I think ours is sort of one of the few, but that's something fairly new that I really think helps women more than anybody that I think will help my office going forward to continue to get some good diverse candidates.
Thank you. Our next question has to do with people who are opposed to inclusion. So how do we get those who are opposed to inclusion in the room to the table for a dialogue?
That's challenging. So sometimes just the word inclusion will make them not want to come into the room. Some of those conversations I think are successful when they're one-on-one, when I'm talking to someone who I know may not buy into what inclusion is, and we start looking at it. Probably the most challenging ways to talk about inclusion are race and gender. So and sexual orientation. So let's look at some of the other areas, and can we have an easier conversation when we start talking about inclusion there? And I know, some people are like, well, maybe you're watering diversity, equity, and inclusion down when you're doing that, but maybe I'm giving you the pathway that you need to have the conversation. Otherwise, you won't have a conversation with me at all. So making it so where you feel comfortable that you can share your viewpoints, and it's not something where I'm going to get triggered or you're going to get triggered. But if, say, for instance, if this is Autism Month, if we start having a conversation about autism, I don't think you're going to have people, get really upset. Oh, no, we shouldn't do that or whatever. They'll probably engage in a conversation with you. So then you tackled one dimension. Can you then add on to another and then another and another and get people to be more curious about it? So I think, and maybe it's the mediator background in me, if you don't come with a position and just ready to fight sometimes, that may be an easier way to get others who are against this or who believe that they're against this to come to the table to have a conversation. And I think with a lot of people who are opposing when they say diversity, equity, and inclusion are really not aware of, you're part of the conversation. You're part of this whole piece. You're to be included too. And I'm sure everybody has something where they feel like I'm not being treated equally or I'm not being welcome because of a characteristic, no matter what, whether, like I said, it could be your age, it could be your socioeconomic status, your education, or whatever. We all have something where we feel that we should be more included in, but we can't start the conversation with those particular characteristics. How do we have a more free-flowing conversation on something everybody's willing to talk about? That would be my starting point.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think trying to find some common ground, because the hope would be that if you work with these folks and you live in that same sort of world, that you can find some things that you have in common, try to bridge that gap and at least get the conversation going, creating a safe space so that there's a flow of ideas and that people are being honest. And yeah, I just echo everything that Zanelle said. I thought that was a tough question and that was a great answer.
Yeah, it is a tough question. We have a lot of mandatory training within the Department of Justice. I don't know if that's always a good thing because you are forcing people to watch videos or come to a program that, if their views are not aligned with that might not work for them. We have a special emphasis program that all U.S. attorneys' offices have, and we have someone who's dedicated to that. So that person will put on a program. We don't do it for every program every year, but if it's Women's History Month, someone will bring in a speaker and then we have a lunch and people attend. I do think if you can get the right person, that can be very effective to people that maybe aren't interested. But I guess you have to get them to attend which would be the first thing. But I think in a perfect world, you would match up people with certain views, someone who maybe doesn't want to work with someone who has a disability, and you match that person up and they can meet them and you can realize this is a real person and a great person and a smart person. Personally, that doesn't always work, but I hope at least through some of the programs we do that these speakers that come in, I hope that those help some of the folks with some opposite views.
One of the things that the state bar did, I think it is about 2 years ago, they brought in a speaker, Kimberly Papillon, and she's a JD, and she's also a doctor of psychology or something like that. And her request was, do not bill my training as implicit bias training. My training is really talking about the neuroscience of decision making. So a lot of people who, if you would have said implicit bias, didn't come into the room, they were like, oh, what's this neuroscience of decision making? And she's telling you how your brain actually functions and how you're implicitly biased and unconsciously biased too. And once she's going through it and sharing the information, you can see people who possibly walked in and they were reluctant to be there or didn't embrace the idea start saying, oh, okay, this is a real thing and it's impacting everybody and everybody's impacted by it.
That is some good marketing. Yeah, I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing that. As in talking about the next generation, what do you expect to be different or better for the next generation of women, and in particular, women in the law?
So I'll defer to those who are in the generations after mine.
I think that's Amber.
Yeah, it's I think that I'm very fortunate because I think the world that I started practicing law in, women, and I don't mean to say, in anything I'm about to say is that they weren't this way in the past, but I think in today's society, I mean, after COVID and everything has happened, and with the Me Too movements, and we're just not going to back down at this point. We have been emboldened by women like Carrie and Zanelle with good mentorship and just community spaces where we know what we want and we're going to go get it, and we're certainly not going to let some barrier or some man tell us that we can't have this and can't do this. And I think surrounding yourself with other powerful, strong women and just lifting each other up and having the safety in numbers and that sense of community and belonging, it's just it just lights a fire within you. And I think it's really important to participate in events like this, and all of my colleagues agree we want to be doing everything we can to make the practice of law a diverse, safe space, with, to my point earlier, where we all have different paths to success, and what success looks like for me may be different than what success looks like to somebody else, but we're still all on a path, and it's women supporting women. But I think having those allies too, just to support you and be on the background, and having those conversations and the support, even from your male counterparts who necessarily don't experience the same sort of adversities and struggles that women face, just recognizing that those are problems and being part of the solution, and wanting to help, and stepping up to the table. And so I just feel very fortunate that the tide has sort of changed, and I want to be part of that. And I am thankful to have these opportunities and to hear from women like Carrie and Zanelle, who have blazed the trail for us, so to speak, because we wouldn't be here today and feel so emboldened without the foundation being laid for us, frankly.
And we're so appreciative of what your generation is doing, Amber, just taking it forward. And out of all the organizations I belong to, I tell most people, the Women Lawyers Association, this is the only organization that I've been in throughout my legal career that they could say something, hey, we should do something. And within 90 days, they're doing it. everybody else to get stuck in committees. Everybody has to think about it and we have to vote on it. But this is one of those organizations where there's a lot of energy and people from various generations, but definitely the younger generations are coming forth and says, oh, we can go do that. And if they find out it doesn't work, they'll step back and say, hey, let's rethink that. And it's just fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I'm on a lot of hiring committees with my office for attorney and non-attorney jobs, and we have been hiring a lot of women, not because they're women, because they're the best candidates. They just, our top candidates are women. They have impressive backgrounds. We're seeing women with very, very good interview skills compared with their male counterparts. So I think it's a great generation.
They're ready.
That's awesome to hear. And speaking of organizations, some people believe that organizations, for example, affinity bar associations or the Women's Bar Association, appear divisive, right? It's I've heard things like, you know, it's a place that we gather to complain. And it's more divisive than inclusive, and it tends to be. They also see it as a barrier where we're not being treated. We're not going to be accepted as professional equals because we have this this mentality or these beliefs that we're already going into these organizations as um as we need a certain you know, special treatment because of who we are. What are your thoughts on that?
So I belong to Black Women Lawyers, Detroit Bar, probably some others. And from each of those organizations, I get something different. It's a recognition and acknowledgement that I'm not just one person put in a box, but I belong to a lot of different communities. And all of these communities are lawyers. And it's not that anyone is a better lawyer or a worse lawyer or anything like that. We're all lawyers, but we're all bringing something of our own flavor of that characteristic to how we do law. Or maybe we're bringing it as a group. Say for instance, when you think of Black lawyers, they're 5% of the entire profession. So you're bringing, well, how do we make sure that, again, that we have this excellence and that excellence is exposed in various ways in corporations and courts and things like that? And how do we counteract, you know, the narratives that are negative about Black people in society? So that gives me the space in which to do that conversation and to do that work. Then I come into the women lawyers. And like I said, I see a lot of things going there, women from all backgrounds coming together. How do we all move forward together as this collective? And I think what a lot of people think is divisive is that it's not divisive. Before these groups were created, there was no place in the profession for these people to go, for us to go. We were basically outsiders. So where we would go, we would always feel isolated. But now we're going into places where we're not isolated, that I can speak shorthand. You know what it means to be a mom, this, that, and the other. I understand the struggles of being a mom. So when the women lawyers come and say, hey, we need a place to for young mothers to have to pump who are nursing. Okay, I got that. Let me figure out how to make that work. So it's looking at a large community, but realizing that I have smaller communities as well. And it's not shutting off anybody from anything because my largest community is I'm part of the human race. But I need to express these other aspects of me too. They're a part of me too, and they deserve this attention, and they deserve to be expressed when I'm practicing law.
Thank you, Sanel. Amber?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm not involved in quite so many different associations. I wish I was, but I've only been in Michigan for a year. So I'm involved with some local things, but I can say without any hesitation that the groups and memberships that I am a part of, it's all positive. It's nobody's coming here with chips on their shoulders, complaining and bringing negativity to the table. I think there's a real difference between realism and pessimism. But I just go back to the women supporting women, or whatever your group is, or whatever your underlying message or mission is. I haven't experienced any divisiveness or combativeness. It's all we're all reaching towards the same goal. To Zanelle's point, so I would to answer your question, I would ask those individuals who say that, have you attended one of these events? Have you contributed? Because in my experience, these are safe spaces, and it's not to come here and complain. It's to come here and discuss problems and solutions, and different inputs, different backgrounds on how we get there. And you leave these things generally feeling a lot better, like, okay, what I'm doing is worthwhile, it's meaningful, it's impactful, I'm spreading the message, I'm doing good work here. I don't leave these feeling any sort of negative feelings at all. So I just ask, have you actually attended? Have you participated? Or are you just letting your own confirmation biases take over and, being part of the problem instead of talking towards solutions?
I was going to actually say what Amber just said is my, first thought is that these people should probably attend one, a meeting or whatever organization. I haven't personally experienced this. I'm not, honestly involved in a significant number of committees where I think that has ever come up before. So, but I certainly think these groups are really important. So people feel like they have someone to reach out to and, meet new people. And it'd be a shame if anyone thought that was anything negative, but I would just ask them to come and participate. And I can't speak from experience, but I would hope that other, for example, like affinity law organizations, if someone wanted to participate who wasn't a member of that group, that I would hope that they would be welcome. And I would expect that would be the case.
I even believe they have memberships open for them, Carrie. It's not like it says you have to be a woman to be in the Women's Lawyers Association. We do have men who are members.
And I'm a member of the Black Women Lawyers Association.
Yeah.
And I am not Black.
That's what I said. It doesn't require you to have whatever that characteristic is. It's like, do you see this as something that interests you, that you're willing to support whatever the work is being done?
Yeah.
And and it's funny when people say, you create these groups to be divisive. Well, what, before 1940, where was there a ladies' restroom for women judges? So you've created a space that didn't even recognize that a woman would be in your space, but now she's there. So you don't think that she should have support so she can do just as well in that space as you as a man could do? It's a little absurd.
It's true.
So in talking about judges, what are some of the gaps in diversity that you see in courts and courtrooms? And what ideas do you have to fill those gaps?
I don't know what the numbers are in Michigan, but if we look at just the numbers of lawyers, like, again, you can see that there is some gaps. First of all, oftentimes there's going to be a generational gap because of the money and expense that it takes to do a campaign or to have the political clout and influence to get the appointment. There may be some gaps there. So there may be generational gaps. There may be socioeconomic gaps. Are you getting everybody from different backgrounds? We got our first Supreme Court justice who did public defense in 180 whatever plus years. But we want to say that justice is equal and it embraces everybody. So we have to figure out, how does everybody have representation, or how, even if I'm not from that particular background, that diverse background, that I have an understanding and a curiosity and want to make sure that they too have access to justice, and justice is in fact fair when people from diverse backgrounds come before me.
Thanks. And now Amber.
Well, I would say again to the under an overall message is putting women in leadership positions and powerful spots and helping to get them to that position. I think our most recent Supreme Court justice, what an incredible woman. I mean, she's a young mom. She's got a diverse background from, every different category. And she's just such a hard worker, and she was not going to let anybody tell her no. It's just, I went to a talk that she did the other day, and she was just so impressive. So having someone in her position, I think, just gives, young folks going to law school or just graduating, like, look, she could do it, I can do it too, sort of a thing. And for myself, I've always tried to surround myself with powerful women like that. That's why I actually clerked for the chief judge that you mentioned down in Gulfport, Mississippi. I was not at all interested in bankruptcy, but I had the opportunity to interview with Judge Sampson, who was the first female judge in Mississippi, and got the chief judge position. And so that was just really incredible. And a state like Mississippi has a long way to go when it comes to putting women in leadership roles. So I just would say to try to surround yourself with powerful women, uplift other women. But I think we're making a lot of progress, and I think our most recent Supreme Court justice would be the epitome of that. And to see someone who had her background, is so young but so hungry, and had the support of her community around her, and now she's a justice of the Supreme Court, and she's came out with some opinions recently that have been cited to already hundreds of times. So I just think that is super impressive, and I like the direction that we're heading. And I think she's a great role model. So in those respects, I think we're doing a good job. We have certainly a very long way to go, but at least we're on the right path, making progress.
Absolutely. Thank you. Carrie?
Yep. So in my experience in the federal court system, it's obviously a little bit different when you're talking about judges being appointed. And we are fortunate enough, really for the first time ever, to now have two federal district court judges and a magistrate judge, including Judge Jarboe, I can't remember what year she was appointed by President Trump, but she was born in Iraq. And so it's as diverse as we get in West Michigan with our judges, but she's the first woman from there appointed to a judge position in the Western District. I don't know a lot about the makeup of the elected judges in Michigan, and I think to get diversity there is probably a little bit different. You either need that to come from the parties themselves, to sort of put more effort in promoting candidates with more diverse backgrounds. And I know we have some good people in government, some women right now, at least in Western Michigan. And then I think aside from that, maybe there was some way to make it a little bit more attainable for women of more diverse backgrounds to run without the party support. Because I think we know they're non-party positions, but I think we all know they really are party positions, because you are getting some support in some capacity, I think, in my limited experience from the party. So it's not something I have a lot of experience with, but I think it would be nice if there was more way or more outreach, or more ways for women to run for judgeships without maybe the financial component needing to raise as much money, or something along that lines I think would help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if I'm going to butcher this acronym, so I'm going to spell it. If we were doing an SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, on true inclusion, what do you identify as a strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat?
I'll start. I think our threat is if we become complacent, or people who really think this is a good idea, but really aren't doing anything. I think that's the threat, that it's looked at as like it could be a trend. This is great, but I'm not gonna, put really any real skin in the game, that type of thing. I think that's the biggest threat. I think that's bigger than even those who are vocal and very actively opposing it, because I believe that majority, if we could get them, we would have the critical mass to get the work done a lot quicker than we can than is anticipated. I can't remember. I think it was like, if progress continues for women on the pace that we're going, it's going to be another 30 years or something before we get anything really more significant than what we have. So definitely we need some people who are sitting on the sidelines to jump into the arena and start doing the work. The opportunity is, there's so many resources. There's so many ways to get the message out. You can tweet it, post it, share it on a podcast, learn more about it, through various bar associations, your workplace. So there's so many opportunities out there. The weakness, I think, if we only look at it, if we have one approach and only take one approach only, and think that, it has to be this and it has to go this way, that could be crippling. Because like I said, I think oftentimes if we don't look at multiple ways to bring people into the room, a lot of people are just going to stay out. And the strength is, I think, that we have made some terrific strides. We are getting, this work has been around for so long, but I think we're now getting a good vocabulary, and it's widespread and it's crossing against all the demographics, and everybody at once is saying we want inclusion. Whereas before you would see like a pocket of people from one background saying we want inclusion, another one saying we want inclusion or we want some rights. But now I think everybody is saying it as at once. So I think this is an opportunity for all voices to be heard.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Zanelle said. I think our strength, to circle back to our point earlier about the younger generations, I'm on our recruiting and hiring committee at my firm, and that's one of the first questions, and the question that gets asked the most when we're interviewing, and it's male or female, it's white or black, is what is this firm doing to be more inclusive? What are your diversity and inclusivity efforts? What steps are you taking? And so I think that's really important, that conversation is starting early on in law school, and that is a main priority for candidates to come to the table. I mean, they're asking those questions before they're asking questions about salary and billable hours and all that sort of thing. The first question on their mind is, am I going to be a good fit here? Am I going to be valued? So I think that's great. I would say for the weaknesses and the threats, I agree with Zanelle, is that we get complacent, or that this is some sort of trend right now, but people are going to get busy and put their heads down and forget the bigger picture. So I agree with that. And then opportunity kind of circles back with my first point. I think right now we need to ride the tide and take advantage of the swell, so to say, with so many women and men being interested in these conversations, and bringing folks to the table, and keep riding on this wave, and just make sure that we're not letting this conversation stop premature, and continue to get involved, continue to make it part of the discussions, part of the hiring initiatives, and just not slowing down.
Thank you.
Okay.
Carrie?
Yep. Okay. I tried to take some notes, so hopefully we'll have something a little bit different to add, although I really agree and echo what everyone else said. So I think the strength of a more inclusive environment is that people are going to be more content at work, and they're going to do better in their jobs, and you're going to retain employees longer. And my hope is that eventually overcomes the weaknesses, which maybe is, and I agree, I actually wrote down the trend. I think that's exactly it. Like, are there, and I'm sure there are a lot of people waiting for this to pass. And when will things kind of circle back to the way it was before? And so, but I think if organizations continue to promote this more inclusive workforce, that everyone's going to see that it really works. And this is what society looks like, is this inclusive environment. And now this is what my organization looks like. And then you sort of overcome some of those. One potential weakness when I think of it is not following through, or, a firm, or even, even within the government, we have to do all of these things within that the Department of Justice mandates, like a plan, and a plan for this, and a diversity plan, but are those actually being carried out? Like the fact that we're writing a plan and sending it to whoever we have to send it to in DC, well, is anything actually being done? So I think that can be a weakness, where you're saying we're not doing. And I think with opportunities, I sort of alluded to this in the beginning, is having diversity in your hiring panels, and some training. I know we have to do training. I was trying to think. I don't think our training for hiring panels right now requires, or at least the last time I had to do it, required an implicit bias training. I actually just got an email to sign up for one today that just went out DOJ wide, that they're offering. I suspect that will be part of the hiring criteria or training we have to do if it's not already. And I think it matters to see a diverse panel for people that want a diverse environment. And my office is at a place where we can offer that, and we do try to do that now on our panels. And I think that makes candidates more comfortable. You can't really say you're a diverse environment without showing them that you actually are. And so I think that's what the opportunity component, I guess, would mean to me. And I sort of talked about the threat already.
Thank you. And our final question is, do you have any closing thoughts on inclusion, or have I missed anything that you really wanted our audience to know?
I think you did a great job asking a variety of questions. So it's probably after I get off of here, I'll be like, I wish I had thought about and said, but right now, no, I don't have anything, April. Thank you.
Thanks. No. Amber?
I don't have anything either. I just wanted to thank all of you ladies for your time. I know we're all very busy, and I've appreciated this very much, and getting to know you and spending some time here doing our work. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time. This has been a pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, same with me. I think we really covered a lot, and we had so many people at my office want to be on our diversity committee that we just had to form recently, that I stepped back to allow some of our newer people. So, which was really exciting, because it used to be like pulling teeth to get people on these committees. And so this actually gave me a chance to jump in and talk with some of the people who are on these committees and see what they're doing. Because I feel a little bit removed that I'm not a part of it. So it's actually a great opportunity for me to sort of learn about what my office is doing. And sorry, I'm like losing my voice a little bit. But thank you for organizing it, and it was really nice to hear from everyone.
No, thank you. The three of you were great. I learned so much, and definitely there's more work to do, but I think this was a great conversation. We are getting some positive feedback on the chat if you guys have access to that. We got a very nice program. Thank you all for your insights, and great opportunity to hear about different experiences and perspectives. So yeah, we'll distribute this to our members, and thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night.
Thanks.